What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the fifth album by rapper Mystikal. Basically, this project is called Tarantula, and it came out in the late fall of 2001. Now, unfortunately, this is still Mystikal's most recent album. I'd have to say he went to prison a couple years after this album came out, and he was in there for like 6 years, and he's kind of been arrested back and forth between like 2010 and 2022 and stuff. He might seriously be in deep trouble, something like that. But it's unfortunate is because he has such a skilled catalog in some of these albums. I'd have to say I'm definitely looking forward to also reviewing his album from 2000, Let's Get Ready, which I want to say had a #1 single on there. I'm not sure if like I don't recall if Shaky Ass went #1, but it was definitely a pretty big deal back in the year 2000. Definitely some pretty lively type songs. Danger and Mystical got a couple of hits off that album from 2000, one of which was Danger, Been So Long, the other which was Shaky Ass. Both pretty big deal. So Mystical was one of the more booming type artists out of 2000, 2001 as far as that pitch kind of happened. He's definitely one of the ones from the South that was doing things. I mean, once Master P started to dry up a little bit, Master P was starting to dry up a little bit by 2001 and such, but Mystical was still somewhat popping 2001. I mean, this album's a pretty big deal. This definitely was a pretty hit album here. It's going to get a relatively high score, but I'd have to say it's just unfortunate for a number of reasons. It's because Mystical never put out another album after this. But between folks like Outkast, Mystical, Master P, and Ludacris, some of those type folks, those are some of the bigger Southern artists around this particular time. So this was definitely kind of a big deal back in 2001 when it came out. Barely made it into 2001. Almost came out in 2002, but still pretty good pitch to get this one just because Mystical followed up his hit album Let's Get Ready, which was a big deal in the year 2000. It's really too bad that Let's Get Ready didn't have like a third single. I definitely feel like it needed that. I think if Mystical had like a third hit off that particular album, it probably would have fared a lot better. I think I want to say that Let's Get Ready was at least a gold selling album. Maybe it went platinum, but I think for the most part it seemed like a gold selling album. It's the same thing with this particular product. This had a couple of singles on there, not as large as he was in the year 2000, but it was a pretty good follow up just to get some of those type pitches. He teamed up with Pharrell again, which Pharrell was on the hit single Shaky Ass as far as that pitch can happen. He did a pretty good falsetto hook on that particular song, but he's also on Bouncing Back. And he produces at least one other song on this particular album. So it's a good pitch to get Pharrell and get some of these Pharrell and Mystical type songs. It's this kind of concept now. Originally, back in the day, Wikipedia used to say that there were 3 singles off this album. I'm going to still consider that there were, but really nowadays it only lists 2 of them, which is just Bouncing Back, Bumping Me Against the Wall, and then Tarantula, the title track. So, but it is a pretty quality album. The thing about Mystical is he just has some real manic and kind of revved up energy. He's always kind of carnivorous and ravenous as far as that pitch kind of goes. So if you definitely like high octane type stuff, someone like ODB and maybe like someone like ODB and early Ludacris, some of those type folks, and trying to think of someone else, more energetic folks like DMX and some of those type folks, this is a good project. This really, you shouldn't be bored listening to this particular project because Mystical has a pretty compelling personality. I'd say it's probably what made him such a coveted aspect back in the early 2000s. It's just because everyone wanted him to drop more albums, but he just didn't as far as that pitch kind of went. This is definitely a highlight album, I'd have to say. If we would have gotten a Mystical album like in 2004, it definitely would have been pretty quality. I think he definitely would have crested a lot further throughout the 2000s, but once again, this is his most recent album. But so we'll go ahead and talk about the 3 singles on here. Basically, Bouncing Back, Bumping Me Against the Wall is the first single. This has Pharrell. It's produced by Pharrell and the Neptunes as far as that pitch kind of goes. This song is like a loony, kind of rousing nightclub rumbler. I'd have to say in particular. This is like an energetic sequel to Shaky Ass. I would definitely have to say in particular. And this is just a fun and litty kind of jive of a song. And this is just a fun and litty jive of a song, I'd have to say. So it's a pretty nice one. Like I was saying, pretty good sequel to Shaky Ass. Another good team up for Mystical and Pharrell as far as that pitch kind of happens. Pharrell kind of helps with background vocals and stuff like that. He doesn't have as much of a full-blown chorus like he did on Shaky Ass, but it's still a pretty good follow-up. Definitely a good extra kind of song for Mystical to kind of know if you don't really full-blown know as many. This is one of Mystical's most recent hits that has Suppose in particular, and it's definitely a pretty high-octane type one. Definitely has the rousing typeness, so Mystical didn't lose his energy after following up his Let's Get Ready album. It's a pretty good pitch to kind of get this. It's definitely some contemporary type stuff here, I'd have to say. Probably one of my favorite songs on this particular album is the title track, Tarantula. This is definitely a highlight one. Love the beat on this particular song. It's a real snaking type one. It's a dark and murky kind of night outing buzzer of a song, I'd have to say in particular. Real nice one for that. This has a gorgeous hook on here from Butch Cassidy. I'd have to say in particular, real nice one. Just real works extremely well. It's like a manic and jittery kind of delivery this song particularly kind of has, and it just has some dusky kind of social type feel about it. So definitely appreciate the overall thrills of this particular song. Just really nails it quite well. I'd have to say just an overall good buzzer of a song that just works pretty heavily. I'd have to say it's pretty much. I mean, this song is probably more emphatic to me than Bouncing Back, but they're both pretty nice. And I feel like Bouncing Back's probably the one. Bouncing Back's probably the one that's more casual and just more lively, just within a sense of like contemporary typeness for like the pop charts and stuff like that. But I'd say Tarantula's kind of one for like the more and this murky kind of underground type feel that just has a lot more kind of cool in type of feel as far as that pitch kind of goes. This one's a little bit more of just like a murky type one that just has that good outing type of feel about it. But both of which are some pretty good social type appeals of it. I mean, Mystical obviously has the high octane type personality. He should keep your attention pretty well. It's just kind of concept. Both these are just some real good buzzers that work pretty damn well, I'd have to say. So it's a good concept. Definitely pretty emphatic type songs. But then the third single that didn't really chart that well is If It Ain't Live, It Ain't Me. This is kind of a typical kind of one. This is a pretty nice one, but it's not commonly talked about. It's kind of an off to the wayside Mystical single as far as that pitch kind of happens. I think for the most part, the production on Tarantula had wrapped up, but I think for the most part, the promotion for Tarantula had kind of wrapped up for the basic part of it, I'd have to say, but still kind of like a late fourth single, kind of like Ludacris's Diamond in the Back from Chicken and Beer. That one was kind of a single, but just wasn't as full blown kind of talked about. That's kind of the same pitch, but this is a good typical kind of day commerce bustle of a song, I'd have to say. It's like regular day type stuff, I'd have to say in particular, and it's just a peppy song, and it goes good with like Big Truck Driver, I'd have to say. So it's just interesting, some of these just kind of day commerce type ones, just for like a typical day and just stuff like that, just kind of out on the town cruising your truck, some pitches like that, just some of those type pitches just to kind of go and get snackage, get some gas, pay some bills, some stuff like that, get some drive-through food, some of those type pitches as far as that kind of goes. It's surprising that on this particular album that Mystical doesn't really have a ton of kind of nightclub songs on here. He has a few, but not quite as many full-blown as much as there is just day commerce and stuff like that. This is actually a pretty varietized album. There's like some moments on here like Smoke One is not really like a nightclub song. I feel like All Right is not really like a nightclub song. Some of these songs I recommend on here. Go Ahead is not really like a nightclub song. Big Truck Driver is not really like a nightclub song. If It Ain't Live, It Ain't Me is not really like a nightclub song. Just some of these type ones just kind of have the pitch, and then there's some other songs I don't recommend on here that aren't really nightclub songs either. It's just pretty varietized, pretty good packaging of some stuff here, but I just like the concept of some of these day commerce type folk. I just like the concept of some of these day commerce type songs because not every single rapper kind of has some of these. So it's an interesting pitch. But yeah, to basically talk about the songs on this album that I recommend. So there's 14 songs on here, and out of those 14, I wound up recommending to you 9.5. So we'll go ahead and recommend these 9.5 songs. They'd be bouncing. The 9.5 songs would be Bouncing Back, Tarantula, If It Ain't Live, It Ain't Me, Pussy Crook, Big Truck Driver, Ooh Yeah, Go Ahead, The Return, and Smoke One. And the almost song is All Right. So basically, All Right is like an out on the town kind of typical evening pizzazz of a song, I'd have to say. Definitely like a stogie in hand, kind of peppy commute of a song, I'd have to say in particular. And this is just like a standard day kind of song, I'd have to say in particular, but it's just good. Has some relatively good and in a good mood type feels about it, I suppose. It's a good concept for that. It's interesting to kind of get this type of song from Mystical just because it kind of felt like an awkward kind of tangent as far as that particular pitch kind of happened. This kind of one that's not really like a nightclub song, not really like a ladies song, not really like a car song or a smoke song, drug song, something like that. Just kind of one. This is an in-between type song just for like standard, this kind of standard day commerce and things like that. Just kind of strolling up the street, residential type fare, but it's not really like a night song either. It's not really like, I definitely see this as a potential smoking type song, but it goes pretty well with like If It Ain't Live, It Ain't Me. Just a little bit more of like an evening kind of haze towards it, where it's not really night as much, but it's kind of like maybe 6:30, 7 p.m., something like that. It's the sun setting, some of those type pitches, I'd have to say. Basically, Mystical doesn't really talk about getting stoned or stuff like that on this particular song. It's just a pretty typical kind of day fare, just kind of a character type song that just kind of has Mystical on display and stuff like that. Just kind of standard rapping, just stuff like that, and like a song package. Just kind of the aspect of just like typical kind of charisma as far as that kind of goes with it. But it's just kind of the concept that, yeah, it's just some decent day commerce. It's an almost song just because I question how many times I'd listen to it just within the standard fare. I mean, I like it. It just takes some getting used to it, I'd have to say, just whether or not I would I'd full blown blend with like the song as far as the particular pitch kind of goes. But as far as the particular pitch kind of goes, but I do like the song's production on here. It just is a decent bop. It's just kind of just takes some getting used to, I'd have to say, but it's just kind of an in between one for me, I'd have to say. But yeah, there's basically some pretty good highlights on here. Pussy Crook is a pretty nice one. It's like a jittery kind of night flare of a song, I definitely would have to say. It's like some midnight strolls. I would definitely feel like an activity, I would definitely have to suppose. And this is definitely some good midnight strolls and activity, I would definitely have to suppose. Some good concepts for that. It's like a ravenous kind of lady song, I'd have to say in particular. And this song is some ravenous lady shrillness, I would have to say in particular. And this is just good for some crunk time. So I would definitely say this is like an outing type fare, I would have to suppose in particular. Just not, doesn't have to be as much like a full blown nightclub type song, but it definitely could be just within the aspects a little bit more. It's just kind of more focused on women as far as that pitch kind of goes. It's kind of one that can kind of be in the aspect of just nightlife and pitches like that, but I definitely see it as like a residential smokage type song. I definitely see it as like a residential smokage type song as well, just kind of the concept behind it. Pussy Crook is definitely a pretty good album cut. I'd say it's definitely one of the more immediate ones to go for off this particular album. It's definitely one of the best songs on the album, I'd have to say, after Tarantula, Bouncing Back, and probably Big Truck Driver. I'd have to say it's just kind of a concept. This is one of the more immediate highlights, but it's just kind of doesn't quite have the single packaging format of it. It's just kind of one that's like a secondary song in terms of like the singles on here, but it's definitely a good immediate one that you want to go for as far as that pitch kind of goes. It's a real nice, lively, kind of jittery kind of night flash of a song, just some midnight stroll stuff like that. One of the best songs on this particular album is Big Truck Driver. I definitely would say it's a real nice one. It's like a lively kind of cruise out boiler of a song, I'd have to say in particular. It's like this song has a very catchy chorus by a Chica on this particular song. I'd have to say a real nice one. It's like a breezy kind of midday commerce and traffic of a song, I'd have to say in particular. And this is a pretty good ride out type song. So definitely within the concept of it. Once again, this is some more day commerce type stuff, just like If It Ain't Live, It Ain't Me, and All Right. Some of those type ones just kind of get around here. I mean, some of these are kind of cruise out type songs, but I also feel like these can kind of be residential type ones where you're just kind of picking up like Chex Mix and donuts and stuff like that. Some of those type pitches, just getting lemonades, Pepsi, Hennessy, some of those type things, Jack Daniels, some of those type pitches, just some good concepts just for out and about, just kind of in the wind and stuff like that, just kind of in the summer air, some of those type pitches, I'd have to say. So some good concepts. A real pretty good nightclub and strip club type song on here is Ooh Yeah. It's a real nice one. Really like the production on this one. It's just very woozy and groggy. It's like a groggy kind of malaise after hours hangout gem, I'd have to say in particular. It's like a lazy but stellar kind of ladies smoke a few type tune, I'd have to say. The song is like a lazy but stellar kind of ladies smoke a few flip on the TV type tune, I'd have to say in particular. So it's definitely kind of one that can be a hangout type tune just in particular as far as that pitch kind of goes. Definitely a smoke and fuck type song as far as that pitch kind of goes. Definitely smoke a few stuff like that, flip on the TV, some of those type pitches. Works as a pretty good malaise kind of strip club song on top of that. I mean, this can kind of be like a nightclub song in certain pitches, but it's just kind of more, this is just more of like an illicit kind of song, I'd have to say in particular. Definitely for more vivid type nightlife like strip clubs and nightclubs as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's more outing type, fair midnight type pitch as far as that particular kind of goes, but it is a pretty nice one. It's just very groggy and malaise type one that works pretty well. Go Ahead is a pretty nice one. This is produced by Pharrell. This is another one that Go Ahead could have possibly been a single. Has a pretty good Go Ahead has a pretty good packaging of it, I'd have to say in particular. This is a nice one. It's like a city hopping kind of out and about day malaise of a song, I'd have to say in particular. This one's a little bit more hazy and comfortable version of it. And this song's a little bit more hazy and comfortable version of If It Ain't Live, It Ain't Me, something of that type pitch. Just another day commerce type one to kind of get in particular, just some city hopping stuff like that. Just kind of traverse, maybe mild paying bills, stuff like that. This one's not as much like a cruise out kind of song, but just kind of day activity. Once again, another gas station residential type fare as far as that pitch kind of goes. Go Ahead has a pretty good hook from Pharrell on this particular song, so it's another good highlight from their team ups as far as that pitch kind of has with it. But it's basically just a real nice one. Just another day commerce type tune like All Right and Go Ahead and Big Truck Driver and If It Ain't Live, It Ain't Me, some of those type pitches just to kind of get some of those. So it's some other good highlights for that. The Return's a pretty nice one. This is a real bopish type one. It's like a solid kind of vanilla club hopper of a song, I'd have to say in particular. This is like some more good outing noise, I'd have to say, pretty damn well. Works with that particular pitch. I'd say this works well with this definitely works well as like an album cut, I would have to say, and this is just good for some Friday kind of turn up. So once again, there's not a ton of nightclub songs on here. I just kind of feel like the concept, apart from Bouncing Back, Tarantula, Pussy Crook, and maybe Ooh Yeah, I'd have to say the only real other one that has like that full blown type pitch would be The Return. But in terms of like standard nightclub and just dance club type appeal, I feel like The Return is one of the few ones that just has like that standard appeal. I feel like Pussy Crook and Ooh Yeah are more strip club type songs, but I'd have to say this is just another, The Return is just another highlighted type one to kind of get with the same type vibes of Bouncing Back and Tarantula. But it's just some good stuff. I mean, Mystikal's kind of in the nightlife, but he's also in the day life. He kind of juggles and juxtaposes these particular styles pretty damn well in this particular project, I'd have to say. So some good concepts for that. And then Smoke One's a pretty good highlight. This is definitely a bopish type one. It's like a breezy kind of dismantled, kind of solid smokage residential fun of a song, I'd have to say in particular. Definite good gem. It's like an easy kind of hangout haze, I'd have to say in particular. And this is just a tasks done, kind of get crunk kind of hit, I'd have to say. So Mystikal takes a while to start up on this particular song. He kind of starts at about a minute 40 seconds, something around that particular pitch, but it's just a good concept. Definitely just some classic kind of smokage type tunes. You know, Mystikal had to have like a smokage type song on here. Definitely was necessary, I'd have to say in particular. Just some good stuff to kind of get within that pitch. This definitely works as like some PlayStation music and hangout type songs as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it. And if ladies are in the picture, it works good with Ooh Yeah, I'd have to say, just within that particular type pitch behind it. But it's interesting that Mystikal did have some hangout type songs on here in particular, just because there are some good bosses for that sort of turn ups. It's just kind of nightlife, day life, residential life, just stuff like that. Just a pretty good packaging of an album that just has like a lot of varietized type moments. There's plenty of good moments just for like standard Standard Commerce and Commune as far as that pitch kind of goes. Pretty close to a classic early 2000s Southern album, I'd have to say in particular. But to talk about some of these songs I didn't recommend on here, basically these 4.5 touch songs I didn't recommend. So basically, there's just some poor productions on here that really don't amount to much. I feel like the Method Man and Redman song "I Get It Started" is just a pretty poor one. Just didn't really have a good composition. Same thing with Paper Stack. That was another poor type one. I mean, that one could have been like a pretty good smokish type song in particular, but it just kind of felt so pedestrian, just an execution behind it. That one was just kind of a spare type song. Settle the Score with Juvenile is just a poor type one that just didn't really amount to much. I would have figured the execution behind that one would have been a lot better, but it just kind of dropped the ball on that particular one. Just was not that thrilling or compelling, I'd have to say. Just the production fare just didn't really add up to much. And then That's That Shit. And then That Shit was kind of like a cousin of Big Truck Driver, but it just didn't pull it off quite as well as that particular one. It's another kind of That Shit is another kind of car and cruise out type song, but just didn't have the vibes quite as compelling as Big Truck Driver. I'd have to say it was just kind of a poor type one. It's good to kind of get some more songs like that in particular, but it just didn't have the same pitch or catchiness as far as that particular kind of went. So that's the concept behind it. But so me basically recommending 9.5 songs out of 14 on this particular album. I'm gonna go ahead and give this album like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty close to like getting like if I would have liked All Right a lot more, I probably would have gotten like an 8.25, something like that. I'd have to say in particular, just some real good concepts kind of get on here. But it's just kind of concept that I was still on the fence about All Right, just kind of trying to make more decisions about All Right as far as that particularly kind of goes. Just kind of the concept about it. But I would have to say, I would suppose if I do like that song more, I would go ahead and just adjust the score to like an 8.25, something like that. Because this is a damn well thrilling Southern rap album, I'd have to say in particular. It just does a lot of things right, has a lot of good pitches as far as that particularly kind of goes. Definitely the characters off the meter, the deliveries off the meter, the energies off the meter, some of those type fares. And there's a lot of good productions on here for the most part. Just I would say damn near almost 3/4 of the particular product is pretty excellently. I would say damn near 3/4 of the product is pretty excellently produced. It has some excellent singles on here. This very thrilling and outing type fare just within that particular pitch. And I was surprised by some of this day commerce stuff as well. It's just interesting that Mystical had like some day commerce for just Aaron running and stuff like that. Bill Payne, typical kind of strolls up the street and getting snackage. Some of those type tunes. It's just interesting that the day life was as compelling as the nightlife. I'd say so. It's a good concept. The social score, as a result, I'm going to give the social score like a 9.25 out of 10 because I feel like it's really compelling. Just a lot of good bops and gems on here. If there had been a few more songs I enjoyed, it probably would have gotten pretty close to like a 10 out of 10 because Mystical's just energy, delivery, stuff like that is just really ravenous and engaging as far as that pitch kind of goes. The productions on here are pretty thrilling. The hooks are good. Just a whole bunch of stuff like that. It's just compacted. Plenty of good nightlife, day life stuff like that. Just pitches of those type fares. Some car songs, some strip club songs, some lady songs, some pitches like that. Just overall thrills just about this particular album. It's just a very good package album, I'd say. Just definitely one of Mystical's best, and just definitely one you don't want to miss. So in terms of the future, that's kind of difficult just because Mystical has been in trouble left and right. I suppose in particular, he went to prison for 6 years. A couple albums. Mystical went to prison for 6 years. A couple years after this particular album came out, and then just never put out another album after that. He almost signed with Cash Money and some stuff like that, but I don't know. It doesn't really feel likely that he's going to put out another album. But this is definitely a pretty thrilling one that I recommend quite a bit. So I would fuck with Mystical, fuck with this project, and I'm eventually going to review Let's Get Ready and some other out and possibly some other albums by Mystical as far as that pitch kind of goes along with it.